Facts, Part 95. Joe DiMaggio was so devastated when Marilyn Monroe died that he brought flowers to her grave 3 times a week for more than 20 years. He never remarried, and his last words were, "I'll finally get to see Marilyn." Tokyo University's Medical Pathology Museum has a collection of 105 full-body tattoo skins. In the year 2000, a group of therapists were attempting to treat 10-year-old Candace Newmaker's attachment disorder. They were trying a controversial method known as rebirthing. Candace was first wrapped in flannels to represent a womb. She was then sat on by 4 grown adults and was told to free herself. Within 20 minutes, she started screaming and vomiting, but they continued the treatment. Nearly an hour later, she was dead. Morbid Facts, Part 90. Delphine LaLaurie was a 19th century socialite who lived in New Orleans. She owned many slaves, but was known for acting very politely towards them in public. But in 1834, her true evil side was exposed when her house caught on fire. The fire was set by her cook, who was chained to the stove and attempted to burn herself to death. It prompted a group of men to investigate LaLaurie's attic, where they discovered a scene of absolute horror. The room was full of bound slaves who had been tortured so badly that most of the men vomited. Amongst other atrocities, some of the victims were missing their eyes and had their mouths sewn shut. Madame LaLaurie apparently fled the country and lived out the rest of her days in Paris. In 2007, actor Nicolas Cage purchased her former home for $3.5 million. Morbid Facts, Part 100. In 1999, the Davises had to give up their pet chimpanzee Mo after it bit off the finger of a woman who was visiting their California home. He was placed in a monkey sanctuary called Animal Haven Ranch. On Mo's 39th birthday, the couple visited him with a cake when 2 other chimps escaped from their enclosures. They approached the couple and started attacking them for not giving them cake too. Chimpanzees are twice as strong as humans and have no limits for savagery. They have also been known to attack body parts that humans need for survival. So acting accordingly, they ripped off the husband's face and bit off his fingers as well as his floppy trouser snake. The man was conscious during the whole attack and managed to survive after dozens of surgeries. Shortly afterwards, Mo escaped from the sanctuary and was never seen again. Morbid Facts, Part 103. The Scold's Bridle was a device that was used to publicly humiliate women until the 19th century. On the inside, the device had a metal plate that would press down on the tongue and prevent the wearer from speaking. It was placed on women who were said to be troublesome to keep them quiet and prevent them from gossiping. This is a powerful photo of a starving Ugandan boy holding the hand of a missionary in 1980. For many years, the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd told his bandmates that he wouldn't live to the age of 30. His dad reported that even when he was a child, Ronnie would often say, "Daddy, I'll never be 30 years old." When his father asked why he kept saying this, Ronnie would just reply, "Daddy, that's my limit." Sure enough, when he was 29 years old, Ronnie Van Zant died in a plane crash. Morbid Facts, Part 107. This is a comparison of a pug in 1880 versus what the breed looks like today. The pug was selectively bred to feature an extremely flat face, which has contributed to severe breathing difficulties as well as eye problems in many of these dogs. If a person dies on a plane during a flight, their body is typically moved to an empty first-class seat until the plane lands. After the Titanic disaster, the US Congress passed a law requiring passenger vessels to carry more lifeboats. But the added weight made one ship called the SS Eastland too top-heavy. In 1915, the ship capsized before even leaving the dock, killing 844 people. Morbid Facts, Part 106. In 1856, a woman died just after giving birth to a Greek monk named Mihailo Tolotos. The very next day, the baby was taken to a monastery on top of Mount Athos. He then spent his entire 82-year life completely isolated from women. He's the only known man in history to have lived and died without ever seeing a woman. While this may look like a regular city upon first glance, it's actually the world's largest cemetery. Located in Iraq, the Valley of Peace contains over 5 million bodies. Joseph Matheny was a serial killer from Baltimore who was active from the 1970s till the 1990s. Following his arrest, Joseph not only confessed to killing numerous men and women, he also claimed that he used their meat in the burgers that he sold out of his food truck. Morbid Facts, Part 102. In December of 1980, a 19-year-old girl from Minnesota was involved in a car accident in sub-zero temperatures. After the crash, her car wouldn't start, so she walked towards a friend's house who lived 2 miles away. When she was just 15 feet from her friend's front door, she collapsed. That night, temperatures dropped to negative 30 degrees Celsius, and no one was around to help her. 6 hours later, she was discovered frozen solid. She was immediately transported to a nearby hospital, but her skin was too hard to even pierce with a needle. Amazingly, she was still alive, but her pulse was only measured at 12 beats per minute. Hoping for a miracle, doctors wrapped her in a heated blanket, and 2 hours later, she regained consciousness. After 49 days in the hospital, she completely recovered and suffered no permanent damage to any part of her body. Morbid Facts, Part 98. In 1984, singer Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own father on the day before his birthday. He used a gun that Marvin had gifted him despite their sour relationship. Marvin was said to be suicidal at the time, so he hit his father during an altercation. His father always said that if any of his kids tried to hit him, he would kill them. He shot Marvin once in the chest and he was dead. When the first Star Wars movie premiered in 1977, France was still executing criminals with the guillotine. In 1967, 15-year-old James Gordon Wolcott shot and killed his mother, father, and sister after sniffing airplane glue. Today, he's an award-winning psychology professor and the head of the behavioral science department at a university in Illinois. Morbid Facts, Christmas Special. In 2018, a 66-year-old Canadian man was arrested for murdering 8 people over a 7-year span. During that time, he worked as a mall Santa in Toronto. In 1932 Arizona, a man dressed as Santa Claus jumped out of a plane to parachute into a Christmas parade. Sadly, his parachute failed to open and hundreds of parents had to cover their kids' eyes as Santa plummeted to his death. This is a photo of a man dressed as Santa Claus visiting dying workplace children in a hospital ward in 1906. In December of 1959, a man from Los Angeles murdered his wife with a hammer before taking his own life, all while his 3 kids watched in horror. For the next 50 years, the house went completely untouched, as all of the Christmas decorations were still visible from the windows. Morbid Facts, Part 104. In 2017, a billionaire from Brazil announced that he was gonna bury his Bentley for his afterlife. After receiving a lot of online hate for his wasteful decision, he revealed that it was simply a publicity stunt for organ donations. He said people bury things that are much more valuable than cars and nobody seems to care. Patty Mallet became pregnant at age 17 and was pressured by multiple people to abort the baby, but she refused. That baby was Justin Bieber. The Titanic fired 8 emergency flares before it sank. A ship in the area saw the flares and that the boat looked uneven in the water. But the captain didn't believe that the rockets were fired in distress, so he didn't take action. If he had, all of the Titanic's passengers could have been rescued, but instead help didn't arrive for more than 2 hours. Morbid Facts, Part 125. This is a photo of a rubber worker in the Belgian Congo staring at the severed hands and feet of his 5-year-old daughter. She was murdered because he failed to meet his quota for the day. Today, the photo serves as a stark reminder of the brutality that came with colonialism. If we held a minute of silence for every victim of the Holocaust, we would be silent for 11.5 years. This is a photo of 2 autistic boys strapped to a radiator in a mental hospital in 1982. While filming the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980, photographer Robert Landsberg realized he had no chance of surviving it. So he wound the film back, put his camera in his backpack, and laid on top of it to protect the film for future researchers. Morbid Facts, Part 105. In 1941, Soviet archaeologists wanted to open up the tomb of Timur, aka Tamerlane. He was a Turco-Mongol conqueror from the 14th century who is often regarded as one of the greatest military leaders of all time. However, locals urged the Soviets not to do so since it was believed that opening the tomb would curse the world. This was mainly due to the inscription on his tomb, which read, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." And inside his casket, there was another mysterious note that read, "Whoever disturbs my tomb will unleash an invader more terrible than I." But despite the warnings, Joseph Stalin ordered for Tamerlane's body to be exhumed. Just 3 days later, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa and invaded the Soviet Union. Morbid Facts, Part 101. In the original story of Peter Pan, Peter murders members of the Lost Boys when they grow too old. He did this because being an adult was against the rules in Neverland. In the middle of battles with pirates, Peter would also switch sides to kill members of the Lost Boys just for fun. Up until the 1800s, Turkish women who were accused of cheating on their husbands were tied up in a sack filled with cats, then thrown in the ocean. In 1977, 20-year-old Colleen Stan was kidnapped while hitchhiking in California. She was locked in a box the size of a coffin under her kidnapper's bed for 7 years. She had to lie still and couldn't make any noise for 23 hours a day in pitch-black darkness. Her kidnapper was only caught when his wife finally reported him to police. In case you might have missed them, these are some of the most morbid facts I've posted to date. This photo shows the dramatic differences between two boys who were exposed to the same smallpox source in 1901. One of them was vaccinated, the other was not. In 1985, a 13-year-old Colombian girl was trapped up to her waist in volcanic mud flow. Knowing she would die, volunteers and rescuers did their best to comfort her. She died after 60 hours, and her photo became iconic. A grieving mother in Florida decided to add a sandbox to the grave of her baby boy so that his older brother could play with him. A student was once so stressed during an exam that he simply couldn't take it anymore. So he put 2 pencils up his nostrils and headbutted the table, forcing them through his brain. He died instantly and all the other students got A's. Morbid Facts, Part 97. This is a photo of Emmett Till's killers smiling after being acquitted of the brutal murder in 1955. Protected against double jeopardy, the next year the 2 men publicly admitted that they did indeed kill the 14-year-old boy. Princess Qajar of Persia was a national symbol of beauty in the early 1900s. It is said that more than 10 young men committed suicide because she rejected them. A researcher once played an audio recording of an elephant that had died to its herd. They went wild looking for him, and the elephant's daughter called for days afterward. Morbid Facts, Part 94. A woman from Edinburgh, Scotland thought that her frequent nosebleeds were caused by a motorcycle accident. But one day she felt something poking out of her nose while she was taking a shower, and she found the culprit. A 3-inch long leech had been living in her nostril for more than a month. Pool drains are literally powerful enough to suck your organs right out of your body, and it's one of the grisliest ways in which people have died. Starting in the 16th century, the Catholic Church used to castrate young Italian boys to preserve their high-pitched singing voices. Alessandro Moreschi, aka the Last Castrato, sang until his death in 1921. Morbid Facts, Part 96. In 2004, an Iranian girl was left blind and disfigured after a man threw acid in her face for declining his marriage proposal. In response to his crime, instead of paying money or serving jail time, the girl insisted that her attacker should have 20 drops of acid squeezed into his eyes. The Iranian courts ended up agreeing with the punishment. On average, about 12 humans are killed by sharks every year. but about 12,000 sharks are killed by humans every hour. In 1915, Essie Dunbar passed away after suffering from a seizure, and her sister was late for her funeral. When she arrived, the ministers had already lowered the coffin into the ground, but she demanded to see her sister one last time. Upon opening the coffin, the dead woman sat up and smiled. She lived on for another 47 years. Morbid Facts, Part 92. President FDR was having a portrait painted of himself by a watercolor artist on April 12, 1945. But he had been complaining about a headache and suddenly collapsed before the painting was finished. The president had suffered a stroke and died later that day. The unfinished portrait captures his final waking moments. Children that have been exposed to family violence show the same patterns of brain activity as soldiers who have been in combat. In the year 2000, a man survived a jump off the Golden Gate Bridge but broke his back on impact. He was saved from drowning by a sea lion who kept him afloat until rescuers could reach him. Ever since the incident, the man has said that as soon as he jumped, he realized he didn't want to die. Morbid Facts, Part 91. Ever since she was a little girl, Jewel Shuping wanted to be blind. So in 2006, she poured drain cleaner into her eyes and blinded herself. She says that she is happier than ever after fulfilling her lifelong wish. Less than 24 hours after you die, your pet cat will start eating your face. Charlie No Face was an urban legend in Pennsylvania who used to walk along the side of highways at night. In reality, he was a man named Raymond Robinson who was left badly disfigured after a childhood electrocution accident. He only went out at night so his face wouldn't scare people, and he was said to be a friendly and well-liked man.